In a short while, I will be joined here by Undersecretary General Winnie Byanyima, who is the Executive Director of the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS. She will be here to brief ahead of the interactive, multi-stakeholder hearing for the 2026 high-level meeting on HIV/AIDS. She will be joined by Michael Ighodaro, co-chair of the Multi-Stakeholder Task Force. Then tomorrow, my guest will be Edda Mosurnu, Director of OCHA's Crisis Response Division. She will join us virtually to brief on her recent mission in Cuba. I have the following statement that we just issued about the announcement you saw just before this briefing. The Secretary General welcomes today's announcement by the United States of an additional $1.8 billion for the life-saving humanitarian work of the United Nations and our humanitarian partners around the world. This commitment will allow humanitarians to reach millions of people in the most urgent crises with life-saving support. Turning to Yemen, we welcome a major breakthrough in efforts to secure the release of conflict-related detainees. The parties to the conflict in Yemen agreed to release more than 1,600 conflict-related detainees, the largest such release deal since the start of the conflict. This outcome is the result of 14 weeks of intensive negotiations under the auspices of the United Nations in Amman, Jordan. The UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grunberg, said that this is a moment of profound relief for thousands of Yemenis who've endured long and painful waits for the return of their family members. Today's agreement builds on an earlier round of negotiations in December 2025 in Muscat, Oman. As next steps, the parties have also agreed to reconvene to negotiate further releases, to conduct joint visits to one another's detention facilities, and to ensure access to all detainees. We thank Jordan for hosting and supporting this round of negotiations, and the Sultanate of Oman and Switzerland for hosting the earlier rounds of talks. We continue to call for the release of all those arbitrarily detained by the Houthis, including personnel from the UN, non-governmental organizations, civil society, and diplomatic missions, as well as their families. We expect a more official statement later today. I have some travel to announce. The Secretary General will travel to Tokyo, Japan this weekend, where he will chair the biannual session of the UN System Chief Executives Board for Coordination, also known as the CEB, which brings together the heads of the UN System's organizations. While in Japan, the Secretary General will have an audience with His Majesty the Emperor of Japan. He's also scheduled to meet with senior officials, including the Prime Minister, Sanai Takachi, as well as with the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Motegi Toshimitsu. Also in Tokyo, the Secretary General will participate in a high-level symposium entitled Celebrating 70, Japan-UN Cooperation, Expo 2025, and the Future of Multilateralism, which will highlight Japan's continued partnership with the United Nations and its commitment to multilateralism. The symposium, hosted jointly by the United Nations University and the UN Information Center, Tokyo, will bring together senior UN officials, representatives of the government of Japan, and Japanese youth leaders for an open exchange on today's challenges and the path ahead. The Secretary General is expected to hold a press conference on the 20th of May, and we will share additional information closer to that date. He's expected to be back in New York on Wednesday. Turning to Lebanon, we hope that the latest round of direct talks between Lebanon and Israel in Washington, planned for today and tomorrow, will contribute to an effective and durable ceasefire and open a path towards lasting peace. Meanwhile, our UNIFIL peacekeepers continue to observe significant aerial and military activity across its area of operations, including multiple airstrikes yesterday by the Israeli Defense Forces in areas in sectors west and east. Also yesterday, UNIFIL peacekeepers reported a total of 455 firing incidents attributed to the IDF and 6 trajectories of projectiles attributed to Lebanese non-state actors, including Hezbollah. UNIFIL also observed 3 projectile interceptions over the area of operations. We reiterate our call on all the parties to exercise maximum restraint, ensure the protection of civilians and humanitarian personnel, and fully respect their obligations under international humanitarian law. Despite this volatile security environment, UNIFIL continues to support humanitarian deconfliction efforts in coordination with the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Over the last week, humanitarian missions were successfully conducted across sectors east and west, including in Tar, Marjayun, and other areas. Also on Lebanon, our humanitarian colleagues report that despite the ceasefire announced on the 17th of April, attacks affecting civilians and frontline responders continue to be reported daily. Yesterday, a series of drone attacks on cars in the JA area, approximately 20 kilometers south of Beirut, killed at least 8 people, including 2 children, according to Lebanese authorities. OCHA says that displacement levels are again rising nationwide, following the deterioration in the security situation. This morning, renewed displacement orders were issued for 8 villages in southern Lebanon and Bekaa governorates, prompting further population movements. Nearly 130,000 people are currently sheltering in 632 collective shelters. Our humanitarian partners report that both newly displaced families and those returning to shelters are contributing to the increase. Insecurity and the extent of destruction continue to prevent safe and sustained returns. Humanitarian access remains possible but constrained, particularly in southern Lebanon, where damaged roads and bridges, unexploded ordnance, conflict debris, and insecurity delay movements and hinder the restoration of essential services. Since the escalation began, 132 humanitarian movements with essential supplies have been facilitated with the support of the humanitarian notification system. In Gaza, the UN Deputy Special Coordinator Ramiz Al-Akbarov, who is also our resident and humanitarian coordinator, concluded a 2-day visit today. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that Mr. Al-Akbarov visited a community kitchen serving thousands of meals every day. He also saw how material is recycled to help families safely store food, especially in view of the problem of pests and rodents. Humanitarian partners say that displaced families are increasingly reporting skin infections and other illnesses, as rats and insects enter their tents or contaminate their food. We and our partners are doing everything possible to improve sanitation and pest control, but to provide sufficient and longer-lasting responses, access to Gaza's 2 sanitary landfills near the perimeter must be restored. Debris removal machinery must also be allowed to enter, alongside other critical items. Meanwhile, our colleagues continue scaling up education. More than 600 temporary learning spaces are currently operational, which is a 27% increase compared with late March. These spaces serve nearly 60% of boys and girls across Gaza. However, most learners receive on average no more than 3 hours of instruction per day, 3 days per week. Pupils also desperately need more supplies to come in, which need authorization from authorities, but also funding. Turning to the West Bank, settler violence continues. Yesterday, a child was killed in an incident that involved settlers who stole some 700 livestock in the Ramallah area, driving at least 2 families away from their homes. OCHA tells us that between the 5th and 11th of May, about 70 Palestinians, including 10 children, were injured by Israeli forces or settlers, mainly in the context of search operations and raids carried out by Israeli forces, and during settler attacks. So far this year, OCHA has documented over 800 settler attacks that caused casualties or property damage across 220 communities, making an average of 6 incidents per day. Turning to Ukraine, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that large-scale attacks over the past day struck Kiev and other areas in western and central Ukraine, damaging civilian infrastructure and causing more than 140 civilian casualties, including children. While search and rescue operations continue in some locations, at least 15 civilians were reported killed, and 127, including 6 children, were injured across Ukraine, according to Ukrainian authorities. Humanitarian partners delivered assistance, including psychological support, first aid, and construction materials. Today, when delivering another convoy with supplies to civilians living in Ostriv, one of Kherson's hardest-hit areas, a clearly marked United Nations vehicle was severely damaged by 2 drone strikes. The mission delivered food and solar lamps to residents of this hard-to-reach area. While the team managed to safely exit the location, this is not an isolated incident. 56 incidents of violence against humanitarians have been recorded from January to April 2026. Our UN team in Cuba, led by Resident Coordinator Francisco Pichon, continues to support national authorities and communities as the country faces a deepening energy crisis, marked by acute fuel shortages, prolonged blackouts, and severe disruptions to essential services. The situation has deteriorated further in recent days, with fuel reserves largely exhausted and no immediate new imports expected, placing additional strain on electricity generation, transportation, and the delivery of basic services across the country. Through the UN Action Plan responding to Hurricane Melissa and the energy shock, more than $32 million has been mobilized to support affected communities. This has enabled the transport of 48 containers carrying water, sanitation, health, shelter, and protection supplies to the hardest-hit provinces in eastern Cuba. Food assistance has reached some 900,000 people, while solar-powered water pumps and portable water treatment plants are helping restore access to safe water for thousands. Electric generators have also been installed in more than 20 health facilities to sustain critical services. Our UN team continues to support Cuba's clean energy transition. In 2025 alone, UN agencies mobilized nearly $17 million for clean energy initiatives. Our team also continues advocating for humanitarian considerations and practical solutions to facilitate access to fuel and energy, while working with national and international partners to help mitigate the impact of the crisis. And like I said, tomorrow you'll hear more from Edem Wosornu about our humanitarian efforts in Cuba. From Haiti, our OCHA colleagues report that an intensification of armed violence in the Artibonite department in recent weeks triggered displacement and growing humanitarian needs. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 4,400 people have fled their homes between the 2nd and 7th of May. Most are hosted in local communities. Armed attacks on May 8th and May 9th in the communities of St. Mark reportedly resulted in at least 6 people killed and others wounded, according to preliminary reports received by OCHA. These events have triggered new population displacements, with movements ongoing towards St. Mark and Verret. The same areas had also experienced armed violence between March 28th and April 6th, displacing more than 13,500 people and increasing pressure on host communities and basic services. These attacks directly impact livelihoods and food security in a context where more than 5.8 million people, more than half of Haiti's population, are acutely food insecure. Artibonite is one of Haiti's main agricultural production areas, and the violence is forcing farmers to abandon their land and livestock. Humanitarian partners are actively responding, with OCHA bringing partners together in collaboration with the Artibonite Civil Protection Directorate. Meanwhile, Vanessa Frazier, the Special Representative for Children in Armed Conflict, is in Haiti this week, where she will engage with representatives of the government as well as key national institutions to strengthen the protection of children affected by armed violence and to support the work of the UN on the ground. The Special Representative will also have exchanges with members of the diplomatic community, civil society, our UN colleagues, and others to identify concrete areas where the UN can support national child protection systems. As you know, the scale and deterioration of the situation for children in Haiti is alarming. Ms. Frazier will be our guest next Thursday, the 21st of May, and she will brief you on the outcomes of her visit. And tomorrow, the 15th of May, the President of the Economic and Social Council, Luc Bahadur Tapa, will convene a special meeting on safeguarding energy and supply flows, supporting global development through international cooperation, and its impact on development, trade, food security, and economies worldwide. All journalists are invited to attend the event, which starts at 10 a.m. in Conference Room 1. Are there any questions for me before we get to our guest? Yes, Gabriel.
Thanks, Farhan. I might need to follow up with OSHA on this, but I'll just ask you to see if you know anything. Tom mentioned in the briefing that was held here a few minutes ago that there are new access agreements with the OSHA that have come to place in the last few days. Should I follow up with them, or do you know? Does that come?
I believe that they're the ones who will have the details, but clearly he was asked about these questions at the press briefing you just had, and you can go with what he's been telling you.
No problem. I'll follow up with his office. And then on a separate note, Undersecretary General Michaud, I think that's how you pronounce it. I might have mispronounced it. Michaud, I'm sorry.
Gilles Michaud.
Was recently in Israel, and as you might know, he was detained at Ben Gurion Airport. Is the Secretary General aware of this and the circumstances?
Yes, we know about this incident, which is not a recent incident, by the way. But what I can tell you about it is that Mr. Mashoud did get contacted by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who have apologized for his brief detention at the airport. They attributed it the matter to human error. He was in Jerusalem to discuss Israel's obligations in relation to the security of UN personnel in Gaza, the occupied West Bank, and the wider region. And security of UN staff and humanitarians is an essential precondition for our work.
You said it wasn't recent. When was it?
I actually believe that this was from some time back, from some months back. I can check on what the precise date was.
So there was no incident this week that you know of?
I don't believe it was this week. Hold on just one second. Let me just check one thing. Oh, sorry. No, it was on May 12th. Sorry. So it was what day is today? It was 2 days ago.
No problem. Thanks for the clarification. And Farhan, did he cancel his meetings in Israel after this incident?
No, I believe the meetings are proceeding. Like I said, the detention was a brief thing. He was then let go. It was explained as a case of mistaken identity.
Thank you.
Yes, Stefano.
Thank you, Farhan. I don't know if it was asked before, but I don't think so. But a few days ago, the Trump administration released the strategy, the counterterrorism strategy document, in which it says that basically the group the United States has the big concern. One is incorporate the targeting of radically pro-transgender group. So my question for you is, what does it mean? I mean, be pro-transgender means terrorism? What do you think about it?
Well, first of all, that's really a question to ask the U.S. authorities what they mean. This is not our policy; it's theirs. From our standpoint, of course, we call for the respect of all communities, including the LGBT community.
But, okay. Did the Secretary General saw this document? I mean, does it have any reaction on this specific to basically point to a certain group of people and call them terrorists, or who is, for the rights of those people? Did he have a look on this?
We're aware of this document. You're aware of what our standpoint is on human rights and our belief that all member states need to support the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Yes, please. Back.
Thank you, Farhan. About the Xi-Trump summit in Beijing, President Xi of China said that he and Trump have agreed to on this vision of quote constructive strategic stability. In my understanding, the two countries have agreed to at least stabilize their relationship in the coming 3 years and beyond. What does the Secretary General have to say on this particular vision and the overall outcome or outcomes of the summit in Beijing? Thank you.
We certainly welcome any positive movement by the United States and China in terms of dealing with their bilateral relations. A strong relationship between the two countries would have a positive net effect for the world. And with that, let me turn to our guest.